Okay, so when we create a new project, I want a way to add perks to it, which are going to be what people actually pay for that come to the app. And the way that's going to work is kind of complicated, to be honest. So we're going to create a new model that's going to have nested attributes that's going to belong to a project. So when we create a new project, we're able to create those perks alongside it. And a perk model, what I'm calling a perk model, is essentially the plan that the person's going to buy that's going to be a recurring theme. And we're going to use subscriptions for that with Stripe. What I'm going to do first is generate the model. So I will get a new window here, and let's generate the perk model. So we'll say G model perk. Title will be string. Amount is decimal. Description is text. Quantity integer, and project will reference it. Right on. I want to update the amount to be kind of a legit amount in our database, so we can actually append that migration a little bit more logic. So on the amount, I'm going to comma separate this to be precision 8, scale 2, default is 0. So that's just for pricing particular. And I think that's it. So we'll run a migrate on that. Now what we want to do is start to think about adding perks to the model, and that's going to look a little funky than normal, but it's a nested attribute situation. So on the project we'll actually do that. So below this, I'll just add it up here. So accepts nested attributes for, and you could say perks allow destroy is true. Just basically saying, can you destroy it? And then reject, we're going to do a lambda if, or it's a proc, excuse me, proc. And you can loop through attributes, and just it's kind of a validation. So if the attribute title is blank, don't save. There we go. Okay, that's that part of the equation. The perk model itself is going to have a little more stuff. So let's go and say it's already doing that. So we've got belongs to project thanks to that references method we called in the migration or generation. And then finally we need to go to the controller on projects and permit all the parameters we just added for perks. Now this is going to look a little different, so we're kind of comma separate this and just kind of render another array. So perks, and it's going to be plural attributes. And within that will be the ID itself. This is how we can destroy. It's kind of the convention of nested attributes. The title, description, amount, and quantity. All right. Next, we want to use some fancy JavaScript to make this like dynamic. If we were to render our new project form at the moment, you'd need a form within a form, and it wouldn't submit right. I think I might have that spelled wrong. Let's double check my work real quick. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot that you still need has many perks. So has many perks and then dependent destroy. I totally overlooked that. I apologize. Sitting here scratching my head. All right, let's refresh. We should get a better status now. Yes, yes, yes. Come on. There we go. All right. So let's run bundle exec. We're to the point. I want to use stimulus.js to help us with this point. I mentioned that in the very beginning, and it's a nice little JavaScript, I wouldn't call it a framework, but a library to sprinkle in interaction into your app without just taking over your entire front end, which is seemingly annoying to me for like React or views look at things. So we're gonna install Stimulus this way. So bundle exec Rails Webpacker. It's part of Webpacker at core, but you can reach to it to install it this way, and it's all with one command. So I'll go ahead and run it, and it will honestly set things up for us, which is great. So that set us up. You notice it added, of course, dependencies for Node and stuff. It created a hello controller and index controller. We don't need the hello controller, but we can rename it to be the one we want to use. So I will do that. It's all going to be in the JavaScript folder, and the hello controller I'm going to rename to nested form controller. And we'll just get rid of these comments for now. And what I want to do essentially is make it so where I can add a new field dynamically by clicking a button and then remove it dynamically with JavaScript. And it's just going to allow us to do it all in line instead of having to reload a page to add perks to a project. So I'm going to say, I might do a series on Stimulus coming up, but this is how it's going to look for now. So on connect, we're going to not render much. We are going to add association. Event. And we'll say event.prevent default. And you don't have to use semicolons, but we'll say let content equals this dot template target dot inner HTML dot replace template record. Do some regex there, and then we'll just use a new date stamp. And I can't take credit for this. The site Drifting Ruby had a great resource for this concept of adding nested attributes to an app using Stimulus, so props to them for this. We'll say add perk target, insert adjacent HTML, and we'll just say before begin, and then content. Okay, so that's looking for a template record in this case, any record, and then we'll replace, it's going to have this new date attribute. From that we'll get the target and then add that new path into it. So it's going to be dynamic in this sense. We'll be adding fields and stuff. We'll just do event.prevent, and we'll say perk is going to be event.target closest nested fields, and we'll get to the HTML component next. And we're going to say perk.query selector, specifically the destroy input, which is going to be necessary to remove it. We're going to do a star. And set the value to 1. That's going to initialize it to tell Rails to say delete that thing. If it's 0, it stays. Equals none. Nested attributes is kind of confusing. A lot of people aren't huge fans, and I think they use form objects instead. Maybe I'll talk about that in the future though, of how that works. Okay, so let's add this to our form now. I'm going to go, and the controllers themselves, you'd think we need to import it, but this index file is actually importing all of them for us. So that's the nice thing about running that command. We don't even have to do anything to import them. So that's all taken care of. When we did run that command to install stimulus. This controllers was imported there. I'm going to put it a little bit higher. And finally, let's go to that view, and it's going to be in the view projects directory and then the form. And within here, we'll have a nested form. So it's going to look similar to this. Just going to do kind of a margin offset, and then have a call attention to what this section is. So we'll just say text 3XL perks. Let's do 2. And here is where we're going to have a controller. So stimulus works by wrapping the controller logic within something that has a data attribute controller. And it's going to be nested form in this case. Hence the file name we gave it. And within this is where all the logic's going to happen. So we're going to actually use a template tag and data.target is nested form. Finally, form fields for perks perk.new. We're going to have to add the controller coming up, child index. We'll use that template record. And then do perk. Within that, we'll have render perk fields form perk. So this template will be what gets dynamically rendered when we add the actual fields. So here we're going to say the actual form for fields for. It's the nested attributes way of doing things. Perks do perk. This is where we'll actually render the perks. Oops. And within that, we'll render the perk fields again. So make a partial. Okay. And then the actual target to create the perk. So data target nested form dot add perk. Now that's probably confusing if you're not familiar with stimulus, and it still is for me, even though I am, but it's one of those things that just takes a little getting used to. So let's render our perk fields. And it's relatively a simple language or library in theory, but you can do pretty much anything with JavaScript in it, so it's kind of neat. And I am going to copy this because it's pretty straightforward. And I'll talk you through it. There's a few key ingredients we need from this though. Okay, so here is the class name we're referencing first in our actual controller JavaScript. So we'll need that one in order to render this thing correctly. On top of that, we need the hidden field. That's the destroy. That's just there to render a field that's either going to have a value of 0 or 1. If it's 0, it stays. If it's 1, it gets destroyed. and we can change that value with JavaScript, and then Rails will know on submit to either delete or keep it. Within that are each field we've had for the initial migration, and then finally, maybe I'll just put subscription amount to make that more clear. And then finally, we have a remove button that will go ahead and remove the association based on the JavaScript we've rendered here. So if you go back into our controller, that might make more sense if you look at this code now. So if all goes right, that should be rendering. And if we can add perk, looks like an error there. Let's check our logs. Nothing. Okay, let's go back to our form. Add perk. This might be nested form.form. I think I have this wrong. Yep, this should be nested dash form. Let's see if this works. Oh, okay, still something up. I can't type. Okay. Let's see. Nested form.template, data target, data controller, nested form. Got that. Perks new, child index. Render perk fields, form fields for perks perk. Yep, it was a typo. What did I do wrong though? Okay, I've got two scripts to compare here. This is the good one. Form.add perk. Okay, so with that added, I think I had a typo. You guys probably saw it. I did not. But we can add the perks now, and it's consecutive. So each time you click add perk, we can add it, and I have remove now too. That should be working, but I don't believe it is. What do we got? And click nested remove association. Did I remove association? I think I spelled this wrong. Yep. Let's try that again. Add perk, remove perk. Okay, cool. So now if we add a perk, let's try it. So perk 1, test, say 30. Let's just say 10 to start. And 100. Great project. Okay. So obviously you'd want to validate this stuff, but cool. And it's still there. Yep, okay. So that works. Now we can render the actual perks out. So let's do that. And to save some time, I'm going to pull that from my other file. It's honestly just rendering perk data, and that's that. So active project. Let's pull in this bit here, and I'll explain it in a sec. Okay. Active project. So underneath the description here, we're going to add this, and it will be a new feature. Okay, so for each perk, we're going to render through and provide its title, quantity, and description. And on top of that, we need to check and see if the current perk is purchased by the user. I don't believe I've added the logic to do this quite yet, so we might need to comment some of that out. We'll have to forego this bit at the moment. But what I want to do is show this bit here. Let me link to back this idea is built upon a parameter which we're going to pass through in a minute. That's going to be the plan ID. We need a unique identifier for the plan because we're going to create those with Stripe on the back end. So the way it's going to work is simple, but not quite. So to do all that, though, we need a new model to kind of invoke this subscription concept. So I'll save this down and show you what's going on here. Essentially, we're looping through each perk, though, and then providing a path to back that perk based on the amount that it is added. So in our case, we just added one that was like 10. So assuming I don't have syntax errors, which I probably do. Oh, we don't have a subscription path, so that's one other thing. So I'll honestly just say, let's comment that out. And I still have stuff. Jesus. Let's just get rid of this for now. I think it's, oh, I know why it's doing this. Okay. So then we have this kind of look and feel. So obviously, since I created this project, I can't back it. So if I create another account, we would render that button to see. But let's first create the subscription concept. So while I am in the console, I'll add a new subscription model. So let's just do this manually. Honestly, it's not that bad. So I don't even need a model, to be honest. I just need the routing and the controller logic. So let's go and find the controller, or excuse me, routes. And let's add just a simple resource. And a resource, it's not quite resources as you're used to. It doesn't have an index, it just has a show, but you can still do RESTful things for it. So let's think of it as a trimmed down resources. So I'm just going to add a resource of subscription. And we're going to go and create the views for that. So we'll need a subscription folder. And you probably, I mean, it would probably make sense to make a model and just capture some of this data in the database, but I'm doing it the quick and dirty way. So follow this with that in mind. So we'll just need a new. That's where we're going to render the Stripe form to pay for something, and then we need to show. Okay. So the main bread and butter here is the controller, so let's add that. And I could have generated that all probably with a generator, but that's okay. Subscriptions, controller, RB, and then we'll have that class subscriptions controller inherits from application controller. We'll need 3 methods: stuff new, def create, def destroy. We want to create a subscription and be able to visit a new path to create this subscription and also destroy it. So what I want to do in this case is initially find the project we're going to actually subscribe through. So we'll find that. Find params project. Notice we're coming from the project itself. So on this page, we're already on the project. We're going to find the project ID in the URL, which in this case is 5. So that's hopefully clear. Now, with that routing in place, we can go back to that active project class. Let's go and render this link. We're able to go to the new subscription path now that we added that routing. Here I'm passing in some parameters with that request. So each time we go to this new path, we can say pass along the perk amount, pass along the project itself, which is what we're going to get from that params, and then the plan unique identifier I built. So basically just take the title, parameterize it, and then dash perk underscore dash perk ID. And this is necessary in Stripe because we need unique identifiers for the Stripe ID, which I'll show you how we create that in a second. So if we go and click that link, just want to show you the URL. Nothing's here yet, but this is what gets passed through and how that parameter looks and why we're passing it through. we're going to be able to pluck out that stuff in the Stripe form and charge accordingly. So we need the amount, which is going to vary. Perk ID is going to vary. The project's going to vary. So that's why that stuff's coming through that request. So within our new file, we can add what will be the Stripe form. So let's start there. So diff class with 1/2 and MX auto. And we will just do h3 class text 2XL, font bold, text center. You are, we'll just say you are about to back. We'll just M. So since we're passing that project completely through, we're able to access it in the params and just render things, you know, which is kind of neat. So let's add like a fancy, ta-da. What? Apple, you suck. Where's this stupid thing at? I'm looking for the little like megaphone thingamajig for birthday. Really nowhere. Let's just do like this. I don't like it, but whatever. 6 border, give it a border, rounded. Oh, we'll render the actual form. Oh my god, can't type. Form. So the form's where basically the bulk of the stuff's going to be, where we're going to accept Stripe stuff. So we're going to do form with model. And we need an explicit URL, so I'm going to do a subscription URL. Method will be post. And HTML, we need an ID for some JavaScript we're going to add. And then we can just have a div. This is all stuff from Stripe at this point. So label for card element. We're going to use Stripe elements. And then button submit payment. Okay. I'm for certain that I made this fancier looking, so let me do that real quick. On top of that, we need to add some hidden fields. I want this to be nicer too, so we can say back number to currency. Params will be amount. Again, this is coming back in that request, so we have access to this, but it's a different way. And then we could do per month toward em the project. Right on. And we need hidden fields because we need a way to get both the plan that the person is interested in purchasing, in other words, the perk, and also the project itself, so we can you know, tie that to them. So we're going to say a hidden input, and there are Rails ways to make hidden inputs, but I like these because we can actually configure them a lot. So this is how they're going to look. So params plan, and then the same for project. So the plan is going to be necessary so we can create the plan relative to the perk name using that structure I made right here. We'll create the actual plan title in that way because you can customize the idea of a Stripe plan. So we need a way to kind of call that back when the time comes to want to delete your subscription or something, or call upon it. So we can add some classes here just to make this look a little fancier too. So text small, text red 400. And then I'm going to give this a class of Stripe form. We also need some data attributes here. So I can pull in the current users or the existing users publishable key. So at this point, we have that because they've already connected to their Stripe API, because otherwise they can't create a project. Or that isn't actually the case yet, but we will make it that way. Project user dot publishable key. And we'll get this in JavaScript in a second. So this is going to be on the current user who's authenticated already with Stripe, and that's always going to be the case if they're able to create a project. And this is the person who created the project. The person that's using this form is the person backing the project. So hopefully that's clear. Okay, this will just need a class label, and we should be all set, I think. So let's see what that looks like. I forgot to pass through, when we run to the formula, we need to pass through the project. So project. Yeah, there we go. So Stripe isn't mounted yet. We need to do that. Otherwise we'd see a field here to kind of compensate. These styles I've already added to the app. You can go ahead and configure those any which way you want. But let's go and add Stripe to the mix. Let's see. This video's gone pretty long. Let's do that in the very next video. I'll start integrating the Stripe JavaScript next. Hello Rails is my new course on Ruby on Rails. I'll teach you Ruby on Rails from the ground up. Visit hellorails.io for more information.